A special message from Disheveled Editing Lydia this morning. If you happen to start watching this when I uploaded it yesterday, it was missing like an 8-minute chunk that started around the 3.5-minute mark. So I deleted it last night, restored the missing chunk, and this should be the full and complete part. Sorry about that. Hello, friends. It's time for another installment of my read aloud of my novel, The Potion Dealers. I did not mean for it to take this long to get back to this. I just had such a crazy fall and winter that I fell behind on everything. But it is 100% my intention now to get back to this and complete it in a timely fashion. So fingers crossed. And if you're new to this series, I will have a link to the playlist in the description so you can start with part 1. It's a cozy fantasy, well, cozy adjacent fantasy, let's say, that I have been calling a jet age fantasy as opposed to, your steampunk and your gas lamp and everything. This has a 1960s kind of setting. So let's get right back to it. Chapter 19, Glad to be Unhappy. That night, Livonia had the worst dream of her life. Usually she dreamed of harming strangers, which was bad enough. On this night, she saw her father's face. He was fighting her. He had ruggedly handsome features and a long coat with embroidered trim. His dark hair brushed his shoulders. He looked just like the single photograph of him tucked away in her trunk. They stood in a dark hallway with stone walls, almost like a dungeon, but maybe it was just a cellar. His hands were clenched, his face red with the exertion of telepathy, and he was attacking her, ripping at her mind. But he was still losing. She was beating him down slowly, and his eyes were starting to show a hint of fear. He might be talented, but he's just an overconfident child. Fear was good. When you saw the fear in their eyes, you won. She draped her hand over his head as his knees buckled. Long brown braids tumbled forward over her shoulders, brushing the ground. "I'll drag you down with me," he growled. "I think it's too late for you already," she said gently. It was a little sad somehow when they realized what was happening. Lord Calvin will pay good money for what's left of you. Livonia woke with a start. Had she screamed aloud? Goddess, hopefully not. Of all the terrible dreams she'd ever had, that was the worst. Her father's face was so vivid, real enough to touch, but he was terrified, and Livonia felt like she'd been killing him. Her chest was pounding so hard she felt like she might die. Was that real? Was that really my father? Was that a memory? Whose memory? She heard Alfred's door creak open. Damn it, I must have made a noise. Very slowly, she lowered herself back onto the pillow and tried to breathe like a sleeping person. Alfred walked across the apartment without any of the hesitation most people would have in the darkness of night, which also meant she barely had time to shield her stray thoughts before he was at her door, which she had foolishly left open because she liked all the moonlight streaming into the main room. "Ballora," he whispered. She kept trying to breathe slowly. Oh no, what did he hear? How loud was I? I don't even know if I usually make noise in my sleep. I'm always alone. This is why I could never have married Eldornan. "I can't sleep," he whispered, "so I'm going to grab a book." She was entirely sure he knew she was awake. "I'm sorry, it was just one of my dreams." Nightmare? "Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it right now, but I've always had them." "No need to explain. Do you need a cup of tea or anything?" She looked at him in the dark. There was enough ambient light to tell that he seemed to dress like a sorcerer for bed, in some kind of long black robe with wide sleeves and black silk pajamas. There was something to be said for the elegance of the all-black wardrobe. "I'm okay. Are you really going to read, or was that just an excuse to come in here?" "I have insomnia all the time," he shrugged, "and I acquired a very interesting collection right before we met." If you want to read it at your desk, feel free," she whispered. "You'd prefer not to be alone?" I could put on some low, easygoing music out there," he said. "It makes the night feel less empty somehow." "Okay." It felt like a kind of magic to have music playing in the middle of the night in other rooms, and even just to have someone there when she had a nightmare. She took a deep, relieved breath as he left the room, rummaged in the records, and put on the soft music. "This sounds like your apartment looks," she noted. "Really? That's the best description I've ever heard of this place." "Mm-hmm. It's a jazz album called Glad to Be Unhappy, which is the best mood we can manage sometimes in the middle of the night." More softly, he said, "Go back to sleep." Her eyelids were certainly getting very heavy again. She felt safe, knowing he was there, and she tried to remember how she probably shouldn't trust him this much, but she did. She trusted him in a bone-deep way that couldn't be stopped. In the morning, Alfred woke her up with an apologetic, "I need to go to work. Did you want to come with us?" She was groggy, having slipped into a deep sleep with his presence there. But the apartment was cozy. A weather broadcast crackled from a radio, confirming the misty rain outside. Coffee was brewing. Alfred peeled a tangerine and offered her half, along with buttered toast. She got a better look at his robe, which was embroidered all over the hems with an unusual pattern, and she had the strong feeling it came from somewhere else on his travels. And if she asked, he'd have a whole story about it. Someday she would. "George is out for a run," he said. "If you need a shower, you should take it before he does, and I'm sorry that we didn't get you more clothes. I know that one smells like cigarettes, but this is just not the day to be late. We'll get you a proper wardrobe later." Livonia didn't bother to tell him that in Fernana she wore the same clothes for days. She only owned a few for each season. "I bet he'll buy me more than a few," she thought, and she thought she should protest, but why? It wasn't going to work anyway. She would cherish having all those clothes she had coveted. "I should have gotten the pale blue coat and not the black. This is not a sensible place." George returned, sweaty and still giddy that he'd gotten Cherry Doll's autograph behind the club last night, and soon they were all out the door, Alfred holding his umbrella mostly over her instead of himself. She felt raw and conscious of small things. Alfred opening the car door for her, and the sound of the windshield wipers, and the scent of the rain on the pavement. The city felt even bigger as they ventured into a business district with buildings that rose toward the low gray clouds. Everything was gray and slick in the rain. In this part of town, the people truly all looked the same, all of them Daramons and probably natives to the region, with their black hair and brown skin, all of them attractive and never too aged, wealthy enough to shapeshift away any imperfections. Alfred fit right in, while she definitely did not. George pulled into a parking area beneath the building. There was an elevator right beside them. Livonia couldn't even remember how she knew what an elevator was. She must have read about one somewhere. The nightmare felt so far away. But somewhere deep down it lingered like a disease that she knew was draining her life away. What did it mean? Chapter 20. A plan becomes necessary. "These are our offices," Alfred said. "The sales front of the business is run out of here. We have another building in the warehouse district for distribution. Some of the sorcerers in our employ work out there now and then because we have a lot of space and a stash of ingredients, but I usually work here. It's a good place to work on a spell book, but if you'd rather just loaf around, I don't mind." The elevator lifted them to the grand lobby with echoing marble floors. Many companies had offices in this same building, and in the morning everyone clustered around the coffee cart if they weren't rushing to their offices. The elevators were dinging constantly. But the space was so vast and empty that if Alfred stayed reasonably close to George, because no one got too close to George, he didn't need a cane or telekinesis. "Braviter, wow, look at this blonde thing," called Dorvin Porcell, a generally useless little man from Old Money who had an interest in many of the docks in town. They had to deal with him fairly often since they had casino boats that needed places to dock. He was also having an affair with Alfred's father's accountant secretary, but no one was supposed to know. "Is this your little witch from up north?" Livonia bristled, already insulted, but Alfred was confident he could put Porcell in his place before this encounter was over. "This is Livonia Orleston, a skilled magic user, yes," Alfred said. "She'll be working with me for the time being." "I just heard about the curse. Whew, your father is steaming. I mean, I have to give you, it's a bold move, but oof. Good luck turning this ship around." "Are you kidding me? Porcell already knows about this?" If Porcell knew, everyone knew. A beggar child would probably come up to him later and say, "Don't you miss the sun, sir?" "Good thing I am an experienced captain." He gave Porcel's shoulder a clap that was just hard enough to disturb his balance and remind him that he was indeed a small man. It was well worth it, even if Alfred had to expend some telekinesis to nail it. Papa will move on, he continued, and if he doesn't, well, good thing sons outlive fathers, eh? I've got too much to do to dwell on my grandfather's nonsense, but maybe I'll see you later. How's your wife doing, by the way? We haven't noticed her at any of the parties lately, so I hope she and the baby are well. They're great. Good to hear it. Porcel seemed glad to move along. Alfred's satisfaction didn't last even to the elevator, however. So, is your pop telling people what happened? George said. Could have been Victoria, but the fact that Porcel already knew. Was it supposed to be a secret? Livonia asked. I wouldn't make a secret of it, Alfred said, but I did think my father would. If he told everyone immediately, he's throwing out a challenge to me. Do you need to do something special? I need to impress him. We'll figure it out. Alfred's secretary was always early. His last secretary had just left to stay at home with her kids, unfortunately. Annavie was a new hire, barely out of school and eager to please. Good morning, Annavie. This is Livonia. She'll be working here with us for a while. You have such beautiful blonde hair. Wow, Annavie said before handing George a little stack of papers. This was the second time someone complimented Livonia on her hair now, and Alfred couldn't help thinking about that hair, flowing over her bare skin. Did blonde hair feel any different, maybe like corn silk? He'd read that in a book somewhere. Soft, soft hair flowing over her little breasts. Shit, this is not the time to lose focus. I heard about Livonia, Annavie paused nervously. And the curse. We've been getting a lot of calls already. Calls. From our potion makers, the Kamares, Stefan Woad, Telvakis the Elder, your aunt, and your uncle, but not the same two. I mean, not an aunt and uncle that are married to each other. I made notes. Wow, George said, looking at the notes. Papa told everyone? Alfred beat down a slightly ominous feeling. His father wasn't going to oust him over this. No way. Would you like some espresso, Mr. Braviter? Annavie asked. Of course, thank you. He turned to Livonia. First things first. You can settle in here in these chairs by the windows, he said. Annavie, can you give Livonia a nice sturdy notebook and a selection of pencils and pens? Ballora, did you want any coffee or tea? Are you okay? She asked. Now she was concerned for him when she should be focused on herself. This is just some predictable fuss. But he had to manage the fallout fast. My father hasn't called or been by, Annavie? No, I haven't heard anything from him yet. It sounded like Papa had talked to everyone but Alfred. Alfred had to do something to show everyone why he was the heir. Sure, Ed was only 13, but Papa was young enough to wait. Mama was even young enough to have another son. He could hear Livonia in the corner, or more accurately, he did not hear her. She certainly wasn't writing anything, nor was she moving, and he felt her eyes on him. So, George said, I'm just throwing out ideas here, but it feels like this is pretty bad and we need to do something really impressive. I gotta say, I'm pumped after last night. Cherry Doll was definitely kind of into me, if I know anything about women. This was all based on Cherry Doll saying while signing a poster, well, aren't you a big boy? Still, they would need this energy. What is it that your father is so concerned about exactly, Livonia asked. You've already been working for him for years, right? Yes, he's actually been supportive the whole time, Alfred said. But now I know he thought he might find a way to lift this curse eventually, so I have to consider everything I've ever done in that light. What does he think is missing? Authority and force, both in image and in practice. It certainly wasn't the first time he had been tested. This feeling was, in fact, familiar. He had always been able to draw on some other self, a cold and steely personality that could do anything that needed to be done and still sleep at night. George struggled with that, not Alfred. He had already proved that time and again, but his father still protected him for most of it. He thinks I'll get myself killed, or at least the shit kicked out of me badly enough that my reputation would never recover. Did he need to prove himself in a truly life-threatening situation? But even Papa rarely faced that level of danger. Surely he didn't expect that from Alfred. What does he expect from me? What do you normally do at work? Livonia asked. I manage our suppliers, he said. We are, of course, the middlemen between the people who buy magic and the people who produce it, and we protect both groups from each other and from law enforcement. I persuade people that their spells are in good hands with us and negotiate the financial terms. There are a lot of personalities in this business. And you hunt for treasures and preserve old magic. That's more of a side gig, Alfred said. You said your father doesn't always appreciate that aspect. He wants the same basic spells. That's right. He finally walked over to the corner where he'd stuck her, wondering where this was going. From what I know of you so far, you love magic as an art. I can imagine you're good at convincing people to work for you by appealing to whatever made them want to practice magic in the first place. And you have an archive of spells, some of them nearly lost. He sighed. But Papa doesn't really care about any of that. Just nail down the suppliers, Alfie. Whatever you have to do, no fancy shit. That's how he sees it. There's no romance in it, just the money and the control. Do you have to work for him? Livonia asked. The merchant families of Atlantis might as well be kings, he said. That's like asking a prince if he can just go set up his own kingdom when he's arguing with the king. The king has a grip on everything. I figured as much, but is there anyone out there who doesn't want to work for him, but would want to work for you? Miralim? Finarlim? Even other Daramons who don't trust the families? Because that's how I feel, you know. I would write down my herbal recipes for you, not your father. It's a good point, George said. Remember when we tried to cut a deal with Mr. Fabulous? Everyone in the families had made some attempt to court Flynn Fabulous, the darling of the scene over in New Saguenay, and Alfred had felt awfully close to persuading him, but in the end, it all slipped away because his father was not the sort of man who would appeal to anyone who called themselves Flynn Fabulous. He plunked himself into a chair, mussing his hair repeatedly in his agonies. If I could get a really, really difficult client like that, someone Papa could never hammer down, but his shadow follows me everywhere. And he is great with the buyers, George said. Man, the buyers are scary. I hate even thinking about when he does retire and we have to figure them out. Could I help? Livonia asked. Would having a Miralim on your team add some level of trust with a client you weren't able to get before? I wasn't intending to get you that involved. We don't even usually bother with the Miralim, George said. They don't want anything to do with us. You wouldn't do anything to budge Flynn Fabulous, that's for sure, Alfred said. The keeper of the dead either. Vraron could only be seduced, and that's certainly not what we'd use you for. I would love to speak to Maris Tellin, but I'm not sure my father would even care for his sort of magic. The rulers of Dry would never give us an audience at all. I can think of several who retreated to the jungles of Tlaw, but the canoes, the mosquitoes, and we'd be lucky to get that done in 3 weeks. What about Thano? George said. I still have that old article you asked me to save. He lived in the Miralim lands for decades, so Livonia might soften your image with him. He's clearly your kind of sorcerer, and he has a motive for making as much money as possible since he's trying to buy up the marshlands for preservation. That's not far, either. Just the thought of another adventure improved Alfred's mood. Would it satisfy Papa's grievances? Alfred didn't have any better ideas. He'd beaten guys bloody, nailed them with destructive spells, and blinded one troublemaker permanently. He'd proved that he had the will to fight, but he couldn't get much better at it. Getting a new sorcerer in his corner that everyone else would love to have, that would shift the conversation to his strengths. Who is Thano? Livonia asked. Grau Thano is a sorcerer of some renown, but he's also quite the hermit, Alfred said. He was born a Daramon, but he became a Finarlim after suffering some life-threatening injuries, and subsequently invented Veltrix, the best Finarlim skin on the market, and he trained quite a number of other Finarlim in sorcery, too. He and his wife weren't activists in the way we'd think of it now, but they did help to kick off the Finarlim activism movement. They're not famous in a broad sense, neither of them like attention. That interview I asked George to save was the first I'd heard of them, really, but I took note of it. They've since moved back to the Daramon provinces, but in the middle of nowhere. I tried to visit him once, but he wouldn't talk to me. You think he would now? I think he might talk to you, Ballora. If you could get me in the door after you, well, that would be ideal. We'd probably better put out a few fires first, George said. And you have Miss Wode's choir performance tomorrow evening, Annavie said. Damn, he really had almost forgotten all about Thessia. She was always so happy when he showed up to hear her university choir, so even though it made him feel like her dad, he'd already promised. And we need to stop by the library and find Livonia's uncle, Alfred said. So we'll leave as soon as we can. Chapter 21. Sophia, Madam Librarian. The Atlantis Library was an edifice of white stone with a courtyard garden leading up to it. Livonia had never seen a building so impressive and so soothing at once. The old Atlantean god of knowledge, now purely symbolic, stood in the center of a fountain with flowing robes carved in marble, staff in one hand, scroll in the other, wearing a more elaborate version of the Cozy headdress that was once traditional for sorcerers. In this case, the headdress looked like great black antlers with silver ornaments hanging from it over his ears. The garden was sparse in the autumn, but rose bushes lay dormant with benches for reading in this walled space, protected from the noise of the streets. She imagined it was lovely and fragrant in the spring. Wide steps led up from the courtyard into an echoing entrance hall that smelled sweetly of books. Inside, the grand old building was wood-paneled and warmly lit, giving it a cozy feeling despite its size. Most astonishing were the tall shelves of books visible past the front desk. Dozens of packed shelves, maybe even hundreds. I'd always heard Daramons had big libraries, she breathed, but this is beyond my wildest dreams. This is only one floor, Alfred said. It wraps around that wall, and this is only fiction. There are 2 whole floors below us with all the non-fiction. That's the collection you can check out, and the floors above us have reference and the archives. Sophia is the archival librarian, so we go up the elevator, Alfred said. My mind is exploding. Do you want to check out some books before we leave? Stars, yes, I just don't even know where to begin. Business first. He started to lead the way as some children rushed in front of his cane. She took his arm. Let me, before you whack a kid. Grandpapa's cane grows more powerful every time it whacks a kid, Ballora. Oh, I like the way the elevator smells, she said, stepping inside. Isn't the smell of the library elevator the best? You certainly notice a lot of smells for a sighted person. Hit the 3rd floor button, would you? In winter, we only get 5 hours of sun a day in Fernana, you know, she said. And we don't have electricity, of course. I couldn't afford to keep a magical light. Maybe that had an effect. I hadn't thought about how far north you are, so you're not too afraid of the dark, eh? I wish I could say that, she confessed. We do have snow on the ground, glowing under the moonlight. Still, when you're all alone and the moon is hidden, it feels like the darkness will never end and all your senses are perked up. I do get scared. I'm so relieved when the days get longer. He looked gently concerned. After the other night, he probably sensed that there was something about the nights that troubled her. You don't have to be alone now, he said. But also everything smells weird here, she said, more lightly. They used to call it the City of Stinks, he said, but then we appointed a tourism council. The 3rd floor was quiet as a whisper and had lower ceilings, but was just as elegant and perfect, with a row of rooms for quiet study. Big windows with doors led to sunny balconies at the end of each hall, which had the same wood-paneled walls and glowing wall sconces that mimicked magical lights. Sophia was not at her desk, but on a smoking break, as her assistant informed them. They met her out on the balcony. Sophia was sitting with a book and her cigarette, wearing a sun hat that seemed pointless when her skin was already tanned to leather, besides that the sky was gray. Her voice had an androgynous huskiness when she pointed her big sunglasses at them and said, "Oh, my favorite boy, what can I do for you? Who is this little golden bean pod?" "This is Livonia." Alfred gave Livonia's arm a little awkward squeeze. "I've been coming here since I was 13, he muttered, so I'm still a boy. I'll always be much older than you, so you're a boy forever. Sit down, dear Alfie, sit down," Sophia said, patting the next chair. Alfred sat and surreptitiously passed her some folded paper money. "I need you to find a man who works for Det Arianni's political campaign. His name is Frajavel Raihessen, but we don't know if he's using an alias." "Det's campaign, It's a dangerous campaign to work for." "I know," Alfred said. "Might be dangerous to meddle in it, too. Why don't we discuss further payment after you look for his name in all the usual places?" "I'm saving for a new fur coat for Grandmama for Ancestors' Day. She's 200 this year, you know. She looks fantastic, and no potions, except for luster, of course. Every woman should take luster as soon as you turn 50, Livonia, but nothing else, just a shot of whiskey and a long walk every day." "I only brought 40 ill today," Alfred said. "I'm not convinced by this Grandmama story either." All right, you sly fox. Tell me what you know about Mr. Raihessen. Age, employment, wife, children. She took out a little notepad and pulled a pencil from the bun at the back of her neck. Livonia slowly settled onto the edge of a stone planter because there were only 2 chairs. She was sure Alfred would have given her the extra chair if he realized, but it was fine. He's my uncle. He was my father Laren's younger brother, and he should be about 65. He moved to Atlantis just after the war and worked in various jobs, but then he got active in politics and has been working for Det for some years. Since his mayoral bid. Yes. And he's paid, not a volunteer. That's right. He never had a wife or kids, at least, well, now I'm a little unsure of everything he told me. You've never visited him here. He always told me never to come to Atlantis, and he never came back home, either. So he could be into something he doesn't want you to know about, eh? And there are only about 100 things fitting that description around here, Sophia said. This is where men come to get into trouble. Have you ever met him? Do you have a photo? No, I've never met him, and he's never sent a photograph either. This was all beginning to sound more suspicious now. Uncle Frajavel had taken advantage of her isolation a little, hadn't he? No one in Fernana had photographs taken, so Livonia didn't think to demand one. And he's a Miralem. Yes. It seems likely your uncle is using an alias, Sophia said. Det Arianni's offices and volunteers have faced a number of threats. Miralem and Fenarlem would be in more danger than Daramon's. I can take this information and cross-reference it with a number of directories and records. I think I can get a list of his campaign staff. He's come in here a few times himself, and Lilla down in reference is quite a fan. This is really helpful, thank you, Livonia said. I'm the best, and Alfred is my best client. You'd be amazed how rarely these merchants think to just ask a librarian. Chapter 22. Livonia briefly falls under a glamour. Much to her own shock, Livonia couldn't remember ever feeling so excited to wake up in the morning. Autumn was gloomy here, raining every day, but it felt like spring, like her soul was blooming after laying dormant for a long time. This is what it feels like to have new things to look forward to every day, to live with someone who makes you laugh and understands when you need comfort. She kept trying to hold that feeling back, but it would not be contained. Her whole soul sang with it. Her grandparents were probably worried, so she wrote them a letter attempting to explain and asking them to take in her chickens for the foreseeable future. She worked on the spell recipe book, but it seemed like part of her old, small life. What else could she have done in Fernana? Here she would find something new and better. She read voraciously, devouring the stack of library books and the daily newspaper. George would get lunch, and she tried so many different foods from around the world in just a few days. He also bought her a pile of trendy magazines like Cindy, Candy Bar, Picnic, and her favorite one, Strange Girl, because that one included politics and spell recipes. Like someone studying a strange land, she tried to learn the fashions, music, movies, and answered 10 questions to find her style. She was a mystic, of course. You love prowling second-hand shops for grandmother's tunics and cloaks and never go anywhere without a crystal around your neck. Your friends turn to you for love spells and fortunes. You have a way with plants, and your natural looks draw in boys who know how to build you your perfect woodland cottage. There was no way she could be any of the others, like the Jaw girl. Your family might pester you for looking bored, but you just have high standards. An art exhibit or an up-and-coming band will always grab your attention. Because they didn't exist in Fernana. We should go to a department store tomorrow to get you a whole wardrobe, Alfred said that evening. George, which do you think, Bendel's or Terran and Tor? Bendel's, George said. I was thinking I might get a new suit anyway, and they have the tall section. Maybe you should too. We're looking a little old-fashioned. No, I can't wait to look old-fashioned, Alfred said. George shrugged. Either way, Bendel's is hipper. What is a department store? Livonia asked. What sort of departments? Every kind, Alfred said. You'll see. She would indeed. Standing 5 stories tall and occupying an entire block, the department store was the most overstimulating place she had ever experienced. Massive glass windows displayed tableaus of mannequins in colorful fall coats. One was a bakery scene, the other a fictional park with autumn leaves made of paper scattered around them. The doors continuously rotated in a giant circle, catching them in glass and releasing them inside. Inside, glass counters full of shoppers stretched nearly as far as she could see, selling jewelry, perfume, gloves, scarves, and cheap magical trinkets. But above them were 3 additional stories of balconies with clothing and other goods. The smell couldn't just be perfume, it was almost otherworldly, and even though it was only afternoon, few windows looked out on the world. The glamour sealed them in. Warm lights cast a brilliant glow on the glass, marble, and polished golden wood. And it was noisy with a weird echo, a cavernous murmur, the squeak of her shoes on gleaming tiles, piano music wafted from an unknown location. It was like a palace where everything was for sale. There's so much. Who buys all of this? Does anyone need so much? Is there enough money in the world? And you have 2 of these stores? We have a dozen of these stores in Atlantis, George said. This one is just the best. Who buys it all? George, wanting some fancy new suit when he has perfectly good ones at home, Alfred said. Oh, so you're Grandpa Tightwad all of a sudden, George said. That will fit with your dated outfit. I don't want people calling me boy. I want to call other people boy. I'd be Cherry Doll's boy any day, George said, briefly lost in a delusion as he stared up at the men's department. All right, Georgie boy, just stick to black, Alfred said. Livonia and I will go to the women's department, and you get yourself a suit worthy of your future wife, the chameleon of the clubs, the girl who's got it. Yeah, I'll meet you at the ice cream counter, old man. Is there ice cream here, too? Livonia tried to tamp down this feeling, as if she were wealthy and liked it. This was everything about Darmon culture that the Miralem disdained, but it was so seductive. And she did need clothes. No harm in that. No harm in ice cream either. Yes, there's a restaurant, mediocre, and a little ice cream cafe. Alfred took her arm. She had offered it enough times now that it was unspoken and casual. We'll take those elevators to the 2nd floor. Much of the 2nd floor was women's clothing and shoes, along with the restaurant and ice cream parlor, the latter with pastel blue decor and a curved silver counter. I think you'll want at least a week's worth of clothes, Alfred said. 6 outfits, and if you get dresses, some wool stockings. Winter is cold, but mostly above freezing. Plus any shoes or other accessories you think you might need, like a nightgown and robe, a warm hat. Don't worry about the cost. All right. She gazed out at the sea of clothing neatly grouped on racks. This is overwhelming, but I'll try to hurry. Was this fun? She couldn't decide. There was so much to choose from, and she had an immediate sense of what she liked. She had always preferred blues, a little purple, and soft shades of gray. She liked feminine styles, but nothing impractical or too fussy. She had always identified with the humbler wildflowers, pretty in their way, but never the first to grab attention. The trouble was in second-guessing what actually looked right here in the city. She didn't want to dress too old for her age or too much like a country girl. She wanted to look like she belonged with Alfred and George. And Alfred was no help. She just had to take all that she had learned from the fashion magazines and do her best. She couldn't help murmuring out, and maybe this one, or is it too... Then she would trail off. I wish I knew another woman I could snag to shop with you, Alfred said. I imagine George will be back soon for what that's worth. It didn't help when a young couple showed up to shop together, loudly exclaiming over everything. The guy was clearly treating her to an outfit. What about this one, baby? You'd look so sexy in that. I don't know. It's really short. Come on, I want to see you in it. At least try it on. They didn't shut up, and it was hard not to feel like she should be saying more to Alfred, who was standing there with nothing to do. But she had no idea what to tell him. Describing each potential outfit seemed silly. He didn't seem that interested in clothes, which certainly wasn't unusual for any man. Suppose we did end up together somehow. There really would be a lot of experiences we couldn't share. And if we had kids, when it comes to all the sights and the looks of things, it would be me and the kids, but not Alfred. That really must be lonely sometimes. She did sort of understand his mother's grief when she thought of it like that. But then, if she just wanted someone to tell her she looked good, she could have gone with Eldornan, but he was the last thing she wanted. I really like this one, babe. That one's good too. Maybe I'll even get you both. That's too much, babe. Nothing's too much to see my baby looking so good. I want to make Darvlin jealous. It seemed like a thought she had to confront within herself, that certain experiences would not be shared. There was nothing much to do with it, just something to acknowledge and set free, a fluttering moth of a thought. She certainly didn't feel sorry for him, and feeling sorry for herself felt even more ridiculous. Alfred leaned on the rack in front of her. When George comes back, he said in a conspiratorial undertone, we'll knock them out and drag their bodies into the fitting room. Or should I just do it now? She snickered. How mean. Can't you hear that they're both babies? He chuckled in return. I don't think that relationship will last past infancy either. You don't think making Darvlin jealous is enough for a love to last a lifetime? They kept joking around until Babe and Baby shot them a look. A spell had broken. The glamour of the department store had swept her up for a moment, but the clothes really didn't matter that much. She was going to choose the clothes she liked, and that was that. Chapter 23. George's Dream. So that's the girl you like, Livonia asked. She doesn't usually work the afternoon shift, George said, clearly nervous that he had showed up at the bakery with Alfred and Livonia. Don't say anything weird to her. Actually, I'll just order. Tell me what you want. Just an espresso, Alfred said. Tea with honey and an almond bun, Livonia said. Are you going to ask her out? Ask her out? I didn't even think she would be here. I mean, ever? One ridiculous thing Livonia had learned about George is that he had been coming to this bakery almost daily to see Bran for 4 years. I might someday. Why don't you just ask her today? Tell her we're all going to someplace. The movies, Alfred said. Why don't you tell her we're all going to the movies? She's working late. They close in 30 minutes. The timing will never be better. We're not, George said. No way, not today. I'm not prepared. Alfred threw up his hands. You will never be more prepared. She's smiling at you, Livonia said, because Bran had finished with the only other person in line and obviously recognized her daily customer of 4 years. Go! George shot her a pained look and shuffled over to Bran. His every movement screamed his anxiety. I don't usually see you here so late, Bran said cheerfully. I can finally ask what Bran looks like and get a real answer, Alfred whispered. Does she look like a flesh and blood cherry doll or what? The opposite, Livonia said. She's a curvy girl with long black curls and freckles. She's perfectly cute, but honestly, she doesn't stand out. But that's good. At least George doesn't have unrealistic standards. George was now handing over some money. I'll have that right out, Bran said. Thanks. George waited, hands in pockets. He looked up at the menu like he had never seen it before and was going to order more stuff. He looked at the pastries again. He bopped his head to the slow cafe music, which was barely boppable. Livonia watched him with pain. The sound of the espresso machine seemed loud and eternal. Bran finally brought him the cups and plates, arranged on a tray. Here you go. With your friends today, huh? Yeah. What are you guys up to today? Nothing. Alfred's hand started flexing like he was strangling a snake. Oh, just a relaxed day then. That's good too. Yeah. Well, enjoy. You too. George picked up the tray. He looked at them, frozen. Alfred snapped and made his way to the counter. Livonia followed him and took her drink off the tray so it was easier to carry. Thank you, Bran. Nice to run into you again, Alfred said. Bran smiled at him, but she looked a little anxious. George, have you decided what movie you want to see yet? No. Easy Rider will have a good soundtrack. Or Beach at the End of the World? Is Una Narnana still in theaters? Never mind, George grunted urgently. The Beach at the End of the World was good, Bran said, leaning on the cash register. My mom and I saw it last week. It has good music, too. What do you think about Easy Rider? Do you know Languages from the Fallen Lands? Because I heard the dub isn't great. But my boss saw Queen of the Last Sanctuary yesterday. She said that one was good. There we go. Everyone would probably like that one, Alfred said. You must be getting off work soon. You know, old George here is stuck with me and Livonia, and it's always better to have even numbers. George's face took on this slight but agonized contortion. Bran straightened up. Sorry, she said, looking uncomfortable. I'm going to my sister's house for dinner. Ignore him, George said. Sorry. He grabbed Alfred and practically dragged him to the door. Livonia smiled awkwardly at Bran. George dropped the tray on an outdoor table. What was that? Alfred cried. Why do you act like a monster who stumbled out of the forest when you're around her? You can't possibly be that awkward every morning. Is it just because we were there? But you might as well take a shot. I almost had it set up for you. She doesn't want to date a Santaroon, George snapped. She told you that? She's alluded to it. You know how girls do sometimes. Putting up the barrier before I even try taking a shot. You could have just said so ages ago then. Now I also look stupid. Alfred dragged out a chair and felt for his espresso with a little huff. You could be honest with me. I do like her, George said. I'm still happy to see her every day. I guess I wanted to keep imagining that it could work out some other way. Besides, I don't like bringing it up. I can't blame her for not wanting any part of this, but I'm not going anywhere either, so it is what it is. I'm not much for complaining. I guess you need to save yourself for Cherry Doll anyway, Alfred said, but his tone was apologetic. Chapter 24. A Journey to Marjon. When Alfred had to go see Thessia's choir performance, George showed off the television. There are some okay sitcoms on tonight, he said. Sitcoms? It's like a comedy show with the same characters. Let's see. Tonight it's My Dead Wife and Hatefully Married on PBT, and then the Mary Marvelers Hour. And on SBS it's Oh Denvreel and 12 Kids Too Many, and then news. PBT is better. The Dead Wife's pretty hot. She's a ghost, not like undead. I'm not really into the undead thing. Of course, Saturday morning is really where it's at. What happens on Saturday morning? Cartoons. Cartoons. Neat, she said, trying to think if she knew what a cartoon was, since she had already asked about sitcoms and didn't want to seem utterly stupid. Aw, yeah. They show a few good ones from the Fallen Lands, like Cyborg 009, Joe 90, and Batman, but the best one is High Seas. Thessia and me are both obsessed with High Seas. What is High Seas about? Okay, so there's a girl who's a pirate, although she has a mysterious past. Thessia thinks she might actually be the queen's daughter, but she could also be the sorceress's daughter. Maybe we'll find out next season. Anyway, she's a pirate for now. 15 minutes later, after George talked over the first half of My Dead Wife, she was sorry she ever asked, but it did sound pretty compelling. It seems like Thessia and George should be the ones getting married. On Friday, Alfred finally got things settled at work, and they woke just before dawn. Alfred made a big pot of coffee and doled it out into thermoses while Livonia volunteered to make the breakfast of fried eggs and smoked fish on toast. George packed the car with several trunks and sleeping bags. Just in case, he said. The eastern marshes are just as old-fashioned as your little village, Ballora, Alfred noted. There's no guarantee of good lodgings. Marjon only has one old traveler's inn, and if they're booked, your only choice is the floor of the common room. Is that likely to happen? Livonia didn't want to sound too prissy, but she had slept alone in a cozy bed for as long as she could remember. Hopefully not, but you do hear interesting things that way. Have you and George actually spent a night in the common room of an inn before? Oh, sure, a few times. I don't mind it, just adds to the adventure. You barely sleep at all, but there is something so convivial about meeting strangers, sharing those last few drinks by the crackling fire. He almost, though not quite, made her hope to sleep on the floor of an inn. There was a real sense of adventure in the gray, chilly darkness and the smell of breakfast, the bread folded in napkins and brought with the coffee out to the packed car so they could get on the road. Her skin tingled with life, the thrill of all that was ahead, the glories of being young. You probably aren't supposed to think about being young right when it's happening, she thought. But youth didn't seem to mean much in Fernana. So far, she had always sat in the back seat of the car with Alfred, but this time Alfred offered her the front seat so she could see the countryside better. She was happy to take it, but a part of her would rather be close to him and gaze at his hands and see his smile, and goddess, I'm getting hopeless and this isn't going anywhere good. He was just at Thessia's choral performance last night, and he didn't even seem like he wanted to go, but he did. So what makes you think he would break off the engagement? You have more sense than this. Her grandmother always said her mother used to seem like a sensible girl until she met Laren Ryehessen. Maybe once you felt this way, you just couldn't keep hold of your sense, no matter how hard you tried. Maybe that was when you really started living, when you lost your iron grip on sense. Their path veered toward the river and stuck there, driving right past Alfred's parents' house in the dawn light and all the other fine manors lining the banks. George pointed out a few of the most notable and who lived there. The Camare Palace was one of the most spectacular, perched on the highest river bank and surrounded by a wall with stone sharks guarding the gate. The house rose up, gray stone and grand arched windows. The Camare family has been at the top as long as anyone can remember, Alfred said. They call themselves the Blessed Camares because their luck never seems to run out. Whenever their patriarch dies, they always seem to have a competent male heir ready to go without much dispute. No stubborn sons with ancestral curses in that lot. Does your family aspire to the top, Livonia asked, or does everyone just figure the Camares have it? We all aspire to the top, Alfred said. Somehow you just can't help it, but then the Camares have always been close with Lord Sharon. They were in on the deal to pass laws that made so much magic illegal, and it was understood that the families would still sell it, discreetly and at greater profit. Once all magical goods run through us, it's much easier to control who has access to magic at all. We've only gotten richer because of it, all of us. But you don't like it, Livonia said, already knowing the answer by now. Too much is lost, Alfred said. You know the old story about the fall of Atlantis. A little, sure. A terrible flood. Thousands of years ago, so much rain fell on the river and the city that no elemental sorcerer in the world could hold back the banks or channel all the canals. The whole city became one with the ocean for several days. Entire houses were lifted off their foundations, great paintings were sucked into the sea. All the storehouses where merchants kept their goods were wiped away. The library was destroyed with precious spell books and histories dating back ages. There's always been the implication that fate punished the city for its greed. I don't believe in that fate stuff, though. Not at all, Livonia asked, as she had always gathered that the belief in fate and karma was deeply ingrained in the Darmon culture. Well, they say if you're born with a disability, it's a punishment for bad deeds in a past life, Alfred said. I wasn't born blind, so it doesn't count, but it makes me bristle. They say that about Finarlem, too, George added. And if Cherry Doll is a punishment, sign me up. But if there was a lesson to be learned from the ancient flood, the Kamares didn't learn it, Alfred continued. They sold out our magical knowledge, the heritage of our entire world, for profit, power, and exclusivity. If magic is illegal and the families are exempt, then every sorcerer has to come through one of us. But this Mr. Thano, he does his own thing. He's not known for making destructive spells, so the magic he does is still legal. But he does know how to use destructive magic. He brought down a dragon back in the day. He just wouldn't tell the world about it. If I can persuade him to work with us, you never know what we might uncover. Alfred could certainly build anticipation for meeting this Mr. Thano. Magic in Fernana was not especially mysterious, but a reclusive sorcerer, well, there was no one like that in Fernana either. George made easy conversation about all the sights along the way. Looks like they finally finished building that casino. Looks tacky as you can imagine from the Riva family. I'm sure, Alfred said. At least they got the damn thing built. That's a miracle. What makes it tacky? Livonia asked, because as far as she could tell, it was a very grand building. Not her style, but she could say that about a lot of places in Atlantis. I mean, I actually love anything tacky, George said. I'd go to that casino. I wish our casinos were tacky. Tacky smells like carpet cleaner and really sweet cocktails and the perfume of the new rich, Alfred said. They have a mascot, George said. It's a sea lion wearing a hat. That does sound a little fun, Livonia said, looking back at the gold-edged building as it disappeared behind them on the road. The modern world began to fall away until the automobile seemed to be all that was left of it. First, the palaces and multi-story edifices of the city turned to tightly packed neighborhoods of small beachside cottages and shops, with glorious views of a moody gray autumn sea and a sky swept by layers of thick clouds. But 2 hours past Atlantis, they drove through the industrial port city of Uvlara, an ugly realm of smokestacks spouting dirty plumes into the sky, and a rail yard with a tangle of freight trains. After that, the railroad went no further, and soon George noted that the power lines had ended by whispering ominously, "We are now leaving the modern world." Of course, Livonia had never lived in this modern world. After spending time in Atlantis, she was aware of time melting away. People in these towns had well-used automobiles, but otherwise the homes were built of old stone, livestock roamed the street, and men still kept their hair in one long braid. Truthfully, Livonia did not find much charm in these villages. In Atlantis, the war seemed like old news. Not here. The people looked suspicious if they glimpsed her blonde hair. These are the sorts of villages that celebrated for days when the royal palace of Otare was destroyed, she thought. Worse than the icy looks they gave her was the chill when she spotted a Finarlem servant in the old style, a bedraggled, inhuman creature made of rags and yarn hair, its glass eyes as theoretically full of life as any flesh-and-blood person, but deadened by a life too bleak to fathom. The hair clips and long tunic vaguely indicated she was intended to be female. She was sweeping the sidewalks with mismatched hands, clutching a broom that seemed too big for her frail body. As soon as the Finarlem girl noticed their shining city car and started to gaze at them, Livonia dropped her eyes. If she actually made eye contact with that poor creature, she might scream. She had never seen anything so wretched. It was terrible that Alfred couldn't see it because she felt like she couldn't describe it. George looked away too. Livonia was growing more nervous about meeting a Finarlem sorcerer, even though she knew he wouldn't be anything like that. By the time the sun was growing low, they had taken a road that veered inland to a marsh that went on as far as the eye could see. Signs of habitation were rare. There was enough dry land to support a road and an occasional homestead, but the only town was Marjon, which was not unlike Fernana, with its one old hotel, general store, and a gas station that was also a blacksmith. George filled up the car, and they all stretched their legs. The air was damp and cool, and the sun wouldn't set for an hour, but it was already so gray that one magic light illuminated the pump. George consulted the map for a long moment before pulling away. "Almost there," he said. By the time they reached Mr. Thanos' house, just one wisp of pink sunset poked through the clouds along the horizon. The sky was growing black in the east. Soft light glowed in the windows of the two-story wooden house that looked over the water and grasses of the marsh toward that dark sky. "Wish we'd made it here a little earlier," George said. "It's so damn dark out here. I feel like we're intruding." "It'll be fine," Alfred said. "Yeah, but Livonia is supposed to speak to them first and butter them up before you come in," George said. "How are you feeling, Liv?" She had almost forgotten about that. She looked at the snug little house, but it was too late to wonder. Someone was already opening the door. Chapter 25. The Sorcerer of the Marsh. "Who are you?" A petite woman stood on the wide porch. Livonia felt her telepathic prodding from across the grassy yard and sensed that she wouldn't hesitate to rip into them. "I have it handled," Livonia assured Alfred and George, and she got out of the car, an odd and unexpected confidence settling over her. This woman was a fellow telepath, a fellow denizen of the old world, and Livonia no longer fell out of her element, but she also wanted to show Alfred and George that she could make things happen. "Hello, I'm Livonia Orleston," she said. "I'm sorry to come so late like this, but is this the home of the sorcerer Grauthano?" "Yes, I'm his wife, Velsa." The woman glanced back and nodded tightly behind her. Livonia must have passed the telepathic security test. A pet wyvern slipped out of the door and flew out to eat a moth. A man appeared behind her just then. "Who is in the car?" he asked. "They're staying in the car," Livonia said. "I needed a way to get to you." "We don't get many visitors out here," he said. "And we don't want many either," his wife added. He smiled. "She's right, but come on, tell us why you came." Livonia approached the porch, and she could see them closer now. They were both Finarlem, but as different from the servant classes as could be imagined. Grau looked almost like a Daramon, uncannily so when you got up close and realized he wasn't flesh and blood at all. He had thick black hair and narrow black eyes, both unlike any other Finarlem she had seen, and was dressed in a knee-length tunic of light wool, dyed a natural indigo color with a little embroidered ribbon trim at the sleeves and along the clasps, a style that had not changed much in centuries. Then she noticed his hands were just bare metal joints, breaking any illusion that his body was real. "I was doing some experiments with some compounds that are very harsh on skin this afternoon," he said, catching her surprise. "If I'd known strangers were in town, I would have made myself presentable." "No need," Livonia said, flushing a little. Velsa, meanwhile, did not look flesh and blood. She had more in common with Cherry Doll. Her eyes were large and golden, and her small red mouth quirked in a slight smile. Her face looked eternally youthful, but Livonia knew she was not young. Her clothes were also humble, Daramon peasant clothes, a work coat, a linen blouse nipped at the waist with a sash, and loose trousers. Livonia could smell a comforting root vegetable warmth coming out of the house from behind them. As she got closer, they looked more expectant. Velsa studied her carefully. They were wary, but not hostile. Livonia had the eerie feeling that her parents could have had similar energy, even though they wouldn't have looked a thing like these two. Her instincts told her to take that feeling and run with it. "I'm a Miralem, as you can see," she said. "My mother came from Fernana, which is a remote village in the far north, but she went to a magic school in Otare where she met my father. He was from Dry. They became very involved in resistance and activism just after the war, and I recently found out that they were trying to free enslaved Finarlem in Atlantis. They ultimately died for it, but we don't have any Finarlem where I'm from." She stopped. "I'm sorry, it's a long story." "I think it's too late to stop now," Grau said. "Do you need a cup of tea?" "The Crisa flower tea is very nice," Velsa said, rising unprompted to make her a cup. Livonia bit her lip. That's very kind of you. Velsa poured something from the kitchen and came back with the hot tea with a soothing floral scent. Velsa had a delicate way of moving that summoned up a whole other world, probably a rather dark world of Finarlem concubines, but they were far from that now. It was hard not to be mesmerized by this strange elegance out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm trying to understand what they fought for, Livonia said, and how I could carry on. I would want them to be proud of me. Ever since Alfred told her about the Thanos history, she had been thinking how to approach them. It came from a genuine place. She felt so removed from her parents' decision to risk their lives. Are you asking why your parents risked their lives for other people or how to carry on their work? Grau asked. Both, I guess. I mean, I know why. I assume they cared about people in trouble and maybe wanted a little revenge after the war, but to go all the way to Atlantis... If your father was from Dry, that explains it, Velsa said. The dearest friend of the Queen of Dry was a Finarlem concubine who was taken to serve in a wealthy man's house in Atlantis. Everyone knew what a horrible fate that was. She visibly shuddered. Few Daramons saw any of us as people back then, but the Queen of Dry herself was a Miralem soul reincarnated as a Finarlem. It could not be denied that the souls of Finarlem included Miralem. When they created us, it was like they were kidnapping us from the spirit world. Miralem and Daramons have different souls? Livonia asked. Well, no one really knows for sure, Grau said. It's quite rare to prove someone's past life, so it's all somewhat anecdotal. The Queen of Dragons was always a Miralem before. We can at least say that. I feel like I have a Miralem soul, Velsa said. But Grau is right. It's hard to pin down any absolute truths when it comes to souls. I never realized, Livonia said, kidnapping souls from the spirit world. In that case, any of us could be reborn as Finarlem when we die. I assume so. That has certainly made it a very personal battle for many Miralem. While many Daramons believe that only cursed souls are reborn as Finarlem, Miralem generally think it could happen to anyone. Even so, not everyone fights for them. You can be very proud of your parents, I think. Grau said gently. But then sometimes I have these dreams, Livonia said. I see the woman who killed them. I feel like they must be messages. There's just so much I don't understand. Livonia was still flushed. Why are you telling them all of this? You never tell anyone. You haven't even told Alfred about these dreams. It's all right, Velsa said, putting down her teacup. I understand. No Finarlem have parents. It can make you feel very lost not to have any history. And in your case, you only have mysteries. Have you ever gone to see someone for help with these memories? A priestess? Or someone who can speak with the dead, maybe? No. You should begin there, Velsa said. But why did you come here? There are plenty of Finarlem in Atlantis. I hope no one's talking about us. I came because, so far, Alfred Braviter has been the only person I can lean on. She briefly tried to explain the events that brought her here. But now he really needs to prove he can still compete in the magic-dealing marketplace. I know he's already approached you once before and you didn't want to work with him, but I wondered if you would reconsider. His father is threatening to cut him off. You think a member of the families would support you with any of this? Grau asked. Alfred would. He's not like I expected Atlanteans to be. Alfred Braviter, I remember him being kind of a suave bastard, too, Grau said, raising his brows. Livonia's face heated. I think that's just how he has to be to survive in Atlantis. I appreciate your earnestness, Grau said, but if I were you, I'd advise you not to mess with the families. I'm the last person who would, Livonia said. I'm as Miralem as they come. I live well north of Avalon, where we have more hunting tribesmen than small holdings, and I've grown up hearing about the war, the evils of Daramons, their cruelty and bigotry and warmongering. They were always our enemies. But I can feel that Alfred will do something different. At least he could, she thought. Truthfully, Alfred seemed pessimistic about whether anything could really change. Was she promising something that Alfred wouldn't actually deliver? She didn't feel right asking the Thanos to work for his father. But I think Alfred could do something on his own. He probably just needs to see the potential for himself. Velsa and Grau looked at each other. Grau waved a hand at the car. Bring Alfred in here. He put a hand on Velsa's shoulder, drawing her in to confer while Livonia went to get Alfred. He started to follow her without using his cane or taking her arm. Alfred, are you using telekinesis? She whispered. Well, yes, I don't want to look weak for a negotiation. When she hesitated, he stopped. Shouldn't I? I don't think they will judge you for that. I think Velsa will sense a lack of authenticity and she won't like it. That makes perfect sense, he said, even if it goes against everything my father taught me. They're not clients your father would ever get. Exactly. Despite this, his utterly Daramon manners, the little bow and self-assured schmooze of his greeting immediately made Livonia nervous. Atlanteans were so slick. Please have a seat, Velsa said. I do remember you, Mr. Broviter. And I certainly remember my all-too-brief encounter with magic users of such renown, he said. I'm not really seeking renown, Grau said. I know you're trying to purchase as much of this marsh as possible, Alfred said. I know there's talk of filling it in. So we're back to bribery, Grau said. No, definitely not bribery, Alfred said. I would never want to destroy a place like this. But you're aware of what keeps me up at night, and you'd like to exploit it. Livonia's heart was quickly sinking. No, she said. Alfred wants to preserve something too. Magic itself, old magic, old potion recipes. But the potions you want are sold to... Velsa trailed off, but finishing the sentence was hardly necessary. Things are changing, Alfred said. Commit to it, Livonia told him telepathically. I think we might be able to work with them if they believe you might change things. It's how Atlantean merchants get rich, Velsa said. Any way they can. You know what Finarlem think of you, and for good reason. Alfred frowned just slightly before saying, My father is the old guard, and who am I but his spoiled heir? But I also know that this old guard underestimates and disregards anyone who isn't one of them. I know it from experience. I'm barely clinging to my own position. I don't claim to know what Finarlem go through. I've had everything I've ever wanted and plenty I never would have asked for, including a Santaroon. But all my life I've been on the receiving end of a hefty dose of expectation and judgment because of this curse. Let me ask you two, considering all the bias against Finarlem all over the world, would you choose to be, or go back to, flesh and blood? No way, Grau said. Finarlem are superior, in my opinion. Daramons are getting terrified of what they created, as well they should. Velsa shook her head. When I was younger, maybe. Of course, everything was worse back then. It would be a terrible shock at this age. Livonia told us you refused a cure for your curse. George is, without a doubt, more of a physical fighter than I am because he can see. But we notice different things. We're better as a team. I'd like to see that team expand. Not just the same bland Daramon sorcerers, but a network of people with different viewpoints and skills. And what does your family think of this strategy? Grau asked. My sister married a Horan. I'm well aware of the way the families operate. You behave or they'll break you like they broke her. It hasn't changed. I wasn't aware, Alfred said. Is Preya Horan your sister, then? You know her. Grau's eyes briefly betrayed his interest and pain. I've only met her a few times. There are certain social events that bring nearly all the families together, Alfred said. She seemed well, he added, with the slightest hint of reassurance. That's good, Grau said distantly. My father is definitely more progressive than the other family heads, Alfred said, and he won't be the head forever. I know he's looking for a reason not to cut me off. If I could make a deal with you, even a small one, on your own terms. But you're still working directly under him, Grau said. For now. Grau crossed his arms. I'm not working for him. I'm only just barely considering working for you. Alfred's hand stretched and clenched, briefly betraying his frustration. I understand, he said, but I also don't have a path to working independently if I can't get the contracts first. Oh, I think you're more creative than that, Grau said. I thought you said you knew how the families operate, but my father will bury me, but you won't have contact with my father if you work for me. My only motivation to work for you is to fund the preservation of the marsh, and if your father is at all involved, I don't trust any of that for many reasons. I don't like where my potions are going, and I don't even trust that he might not twist my arm to relinquish my land to someone more powerful. The less involvement I have with all of you, the better. And I think you're smart enough to know that's true. Alfred grimaced. I think there's a long game you might be missing. Maybe, Grau said. We'll take our chances, Velsa said. Livonia got the feeling that even if they convinced Grau, Velsa would have thrown up more barriers. You staying at the inn in Marjon? Grau asked, standing up. This was goodbye. I think we'll just drive back to Baltia, Alfred said. Thank you for your time. Livonia still imagined her parents might be a little like the Thanos, and imagination was all she had after all. She felt an unexpected pang of sorrow to be shown the door. She couldn't blame them one bit for turning Alfred down. Shit, Alfred said, back in the car. Not good, George said, in between noisily eating those individually wrapped chocolate-covered hazelnuts. If I was the boss right now, Grau Thano would be working for me, Alfred said. That whole conversation would have gone better from the start. He let you in the door this time, George said. He let Livonia in the door. I thought we might get somewhere, but I've no fucking resources if I split from Papa. It's just impossible. Or am I missing something? How would we do that? You can't just begin with selling Mr. Thanos potions on a small scale and then using that to get another client who wouldn't like your father? George shook his head. Your pop would smash you like a cockroach. Do I have to be a cockroach in this scenario? Alfred asked. What about a spider? Well, I don't like seeing spiders get smashed. George shrugged. Alfred huffed. Start driving. Aye, aye, boss. George started trying to turn around in the muddy yard. Alfred brooded. Livonia looked back at the house. She could see Velsa sitting at the table inside, and it already felt like 100 miles away. Chapter 26. On the beach. They drove until they were back in the land of power lines and proper hotels with telephones and toilets, the town of Baltia, just east of Uvlara. This was the vacation spot for the factory workers, humble compared to the resorts around Atlantis, but the beaches weren't bad. Since it was autumn, the weather was blustery and only the larger hotels were open, but Alfred welcomed the prospect of a cold night walk by the ocean. He had always been able to find his way through any situation life had ever thrown at him, so surely this time. And yet he had nothing, no ideas. His father had all the control, and Alfred only saw this going two ways. In one scenario, his father kept him as heir, but found more and more ways to install shadow rulers, some of his most trusted men, to keep Alfred in a sheltered bubble where he had less and less actual power. In scenario 2, Alfred was simply brushed aside and given a comfortable allowance. He could maintain a lifestyle, but he would have nothing of worth, nothing he had earned, while his father turned his attention to Edward. I could hunt for treasures to my heart's content, Alfred thought, but how often did he find anything that amazing? He was nothing but an amateur, a rich kid poking around to amuse himself. And then there's my archive from the Order of the Arcane Hand, Alfred thought. I could work on something, a book, but I'm not a writer, and the Order feels like my own secret. It was nearly midnight by the time they settled into a hotel suite. Alfred buttoned up his coat and went for a walk. The frigid wind was invigorating, and beaches at night were a good place for solitary thinking. He didn't have to think in solitude for long. Livonia ran up and fell in beside him. Are you all right? She asked. I mean, I know you're not. Do you need to talk? I'm sorry I couldn't get farther with Mr. Thano. It was a valiant effort, Ballora. I just need a new plan. He felt much better with her walking beside him, even though his problems were still the same. The weird thing is, when you're here, I don't even want to talk about myself. How are you doing? Same old, she said wryly. You can stay with me as long as you need to. Thank you, Alfred. Her voice was low, and he shivered a little when she said his name. The waves roared, and the sand was soft under each step. He had his cane in case there was beach debris or a dead body or whatever perils a beach might hold, but so far it was just the cold, clear perfection of the autumn shore. The Thanos made me think of my parents, but I know nothing of my dad, really, so it's just how I imagine my parents. The little sorcerer's house out in the wild, it gave me this deep ache for something. At the same time, I wanted to get back to Atlantis. I feel like a giant pulsing ball of wanting. What do you want? Alfred asked. And it felt like such a loaded question. I don't want to be this Livonia anymore. She turned to him. I want more. I want things I'm ashamed to admit because they feel like a stranger. I want so many things since I met you. His footsteps slowed, and he took a deep breath. He really wanted to kiss her. With every last fiber of his being, like he had never wanted anything in his life, he wanted to grab her and taste her lips and everything else. But Thessia. Alfred could not do that to her. This was no way to begin a relationship. He had to be honest with Thessia first. Break her heart. Break all her dreams of escaping her father. He agreed to that engagement so long ago, never considering that he just didn't know what love felt like yet. He tried to point his face wistfully toward the sea, because Fates knew what sort of look Livonia was reading on him right now. Ballora, don't be ashamed. Fernana was too small for you, that's all. It's your first time in a city, and Atlantis, gray and dirty as she is, she's a temptress. Why don't you go to university, she asked. George, curse him, had brought that up on the ride home. George kept thinking Alfred's core was more of a scholarly soul. George will never get it, but the hunger for power is in my veins, Alfred said, and I don't think that ever leaves you. I get it, she murmured. Do you? I think so. I think I might be a very ambitious person once I figure it all out. He finally had to touch her shoulder, clad in the thick coat. That definitely wasn't cheating, but his intentions hardly felt pure. So do you know what you want next? She asked. I'm my parents' favorite child, and they don't even hide it. Whatever I wanted, they've ultimately bowed to it. And this? Yeah, they'll probably bow to this too. But I don't have power and respect on my own terms, especially now. If Dorvin Porcel feels the need to warn me that Daddy is mad, what do I really have? I need something that's mine. I think you should court the blinded sorcerers, she said, the ones that are still alive. Some of them must have magic to sell. They could be yours. You can speak to them with respect and enthusiasm. Maybe your parents will hate it, but will they complain for long if you're making money? It can't be worse than the turmoil I've already wrought, he said, and for the first time he wondered why he hadn't done this earlier. He knew Papa would react with a groan. Come on, Alfie, you know it's a bad look. We don't need to remind people about your own weaknesses. Livonia was a Miralem. She didn't care about any of that. She could cut through all the nonsense like it never mattered. I like it, Ballora, the more I think of it. He started walking again, slowly, taking his hand back, but her hand drifted to his elbow. I thought I loved Thessia, but I've never wanted her like this. And suddenly her hand was at his lapel, tugging at him. She was taller than Thessia, but still not tall enough to reach his lips without standing on her toes, and then her mouth grazed his. Brief yet bold, the way Thessia only seemed to dream of being. As Livonia's lips and her hand started to pull away, all thought drained from his mind, and he grabbed her, hands to her waist, hungry. Even over the crash of waves he could hear the excitement of her breath, and he tasted her, warm and pliable. It was unbearable. Nothing else mattered. Nothing at all. But having satisfied that first unbearable urge, he managed to pull away. I'm still engaged. I would never have done that if I thought you two really wanted to marry each other. If I thought I was reading you wrong, or hurting her. I don't have much experience with romance. Actually, none. But I don't think I need any. You sound vaguely pained when you talk about Thessia, and at the Cherry Doll concert, Thessia immediately left you at the table and went to dance with George. I can't imagine wanting to bounce off with someone else when you're in the room, and I've never felt like this in my life. I feel the same about you. You're what I need. You push me, challenge my conceptions. He paused, steadying his breathing. But I thought I loved her when I agreed to the engagement, and she needs me. Really? She asked. What, are you just doing her a favor? Marrying her when you don't love her? That's how it's done here, he said. But you're right, it's not what I want. It's not really what Thessia would want either. I need to break it off, but it's not that easy. We're not the only stuck ones. Marrying me is Thessia's only way out. You think my parents are bad. My father is extremely progressive compared to Stefan Woad. Can she marry George? Stefan would never let her marry a Sanaroon. His family rose up from being Sanaroon, so that fall would be unacceptable, even for a daughter. Marrying her myself is the only way to keep her safe. But I will tell Thessia the truth. So you're saying you still might marry her as a business arrangement? I'm saying I won't abandon her until we can figure out something. This isn't about romantic love. It's about someone who is like family. We've known each other since we were kids. Thessia seems like a good person. I wouldn't want her to be hurt or abandoned. I just can't believe this is the only option for her. Unfortunately, Alfred could believe it. But Livonia already had a knack for revealing forks in the road, choices he had not even realized were there. Still, it would not be easy to confess to Thessia that there was no romance or excitement between them. Maybe it was true on her end as well, but she had certainly convinced herself otherwise, and she didn't have a Livonia. Chapter 27, An Unexpected Conversation. Alfred waited for Thessia outside of Saranzi's with a bouquet in his hand. He caught himself plucking off a few petals from anxiety. Damn it. He was doing the right thing. Yes. He would break it to Thessia now, before this escalated any further. It would sting in the moment, but if she thought about it, she might even be relieved. He knew she didn't want kids, and that pressure would be off. He would still offer to help her in every way he could. Her father probably thought Alfred was pathetic for sabotaging the curse as well, and would be relieved to find her someone else. But if she hated her choices, Alfred would always offer her a place. How would he word it? You're like a sister to me. No, that was too awful. You're like a best friend. Except she really wasn't. She was a perfectly nice friend, but very far from George. In fact, if he had to choose between George's life and Thessia's, I don't have anything good that isn't a lie. He was tearing up the flowers again with one idle hand, and he snapped open his braille pocket watch, post-war vintage with a ship on the case. She was late. He thought of the wedding flowers, just ordered. So many flowers, she said. Could you cancel a flower order? Well, he never asked for all those flowers in the first place. He had just stepped inside to tell the host to hold the table another moment when the doors burst open. I'm sorry, Alfred, she panted. There was traffic. She was trying to catch her breath. He put a hand on her shoulder. No problem at all, Ballora. I'm sorry if your flowers are a little haggard. For my mother? She asked, swallowing around more hard breathing. That's so kind. He hadn't brought her flowers in a long time. Their courtship had gotten a little stale from that first too-young parental agreement until now. He'd nearly forgotten that she brought all the flowers he'd ever given her to her mother at the asylum. Are you all right, miss? The host asked. Would you like a little healing potion? I'm fine, she said sharply. She turned to Alfred and said quickly, I tripped on the subway stairs and I got a little scraped up, but I'm fine. I guess I won't worry until I smell the blood, he joked, but now he was wondering what was up with her. The host seated them in the corner right by the window, putting Thessia's flowers into an extra vase. They hardly had a moment to themselves before their server and the sommelier came around. Alfred drowned in the fawning service he well expected as an heir of the family's. Thessia just said she wanted whatever he was having, which was strange. She wasn't usually a let-the-man-take-the-lead girl, and she liked asking questions. Does she know what this dinner is for? He wondered. She already seems out of sorts. But that didn't explain why she would come to dinner scraped up. Did someone hurt her? Did she get in a fight? I think we survived the ordering gauntlet, he said, unfolding his silverware. He smiled, and she was painfully quiet. Thess, I need to ask you something, she said in a low, fierce voice. His heart rate ratcheted up. She does know. Maybe she can just tell, and I've been neglecting her. Go ahead. He braced himself. Maybe it was better this way. Are you going to vote for Det in this upcoming election? She gasped out. The election? He repeated stupidly. Yes, the election. You know how important it is to me, and you've been very cagey about whether you agree with Det's platform or not. I know our fathers would never vote for him, but I'd really like to think you're different, and the closer we're getting to the election, I'm realizing that I need to know if any of this matters to you at all. Then she took a deep, sniffly breath. Are you still thinking about it? She cried. Oh, fates. I'm just all alone. What's wrong with me? She opened her purse and grabbed a handkerchief. I'm so sorry for getting so emotional. I don't want anyone to think you're dumping me, but Alfred, you know Det would be the first person we've ever had on the council who cares about anyone besides men with money. People have just been suffering so much. Ever since the war, he has proposals that would help women in Finarlem. But you probably think this is just a cute little hobby of mine. You and George just humor me. Thessia, I don't think your passions are a cute little hobby, I promise. But you're not sure if you're going to vote for Det? I'll vote for Det, he said very softly. Are you humoring me? We can't just talk about Det at Saranzi's, he whispered. You want someone to put out a hit job on me? It's noisy in here, no one knows. Det's policies would wreck the fortunes of the families. He wants to legalize a lot of the magic we've been profiting on in the black market and end Finarlem slavery. I do agree with those things. In fact, as you know, it's a passion of mine that magic should not be illegal, but I don't dare just talk about these things at fucking Saranzi's. Do you care about Finarlem? Your father is the one still profiting on Finarlem labor, and we will end it all when the business is in our hands. But do you actually care? Did something happen, Tess? You can talk to me. He winced inwardly. But I don't know how to talk to you, that's for sure. Something is wrong with me, she sniffed. I just care so much. No one else cares so much. I wish I didn't. I should be enjoying my life, but how do you not care? I do care. You care, maybe, but it doesn't eat at you all the time. Maybe I'm losing my mind, like my mother. She sniffed again. Thessia rarely discussed her mother. All Alfred knew was that she had been descending into depression and hysterics when Thessia was a baby. Stefan sent her to some posh facility, out of the way. How did it start, he asked, hoping to calm her down. That you cared so much, that it eats at you all the time. She took a shaky breath. We have Finarlem maids at the house, but I never thought much about them. I hardly see them anyway. They clean my room while I'm at school. And they're pretty, so as a kid, I figured they were fine. Like, pretty equals fine, right? She snorted. When I was a kid, my dad had to take me to work once, and I was waiting out in the hall for him. And I saw this Finarlem man. He looked really rough and cheaply made, and he met my eyes. I was so scared, but for some reason, I smiled at him, and he smiled back, and then he looked real. It was this weird moment that stuck in my brain, and I started reading stuff about Finarlem. And then, she fidgeted. I'm going to tell you a really dumb secret, since I'm trying to be honest. Before we were engaged, there was a Finarlem boy at school, and I kind of had a crush on him. Really? A Finarlem at your school? When was that? When I was at the academy, he was really quiet, but he was the best in the whole school at magic classes. I noticed him just because it's such an audacious thing to do, a Finarlem attending that school. He was ostracized constantly, but he never seemed nervous. How in the world could a Finarlem afford your school? Because he was Lester Allamont, she said, sounding close to death by embarrassment. An Allamont? You went to school with an Allamont. So he was the future keeper of the dead, a dream contact for a magic dealer. It's not a big deal now. I've never talked to him, of course. I don't actually know him at all. It was just a stupid thing, like having a crush on an actor. And you're ashamed of that? Alfred twisted his napkin. He's the heir to ancient magic. Well, not everyone thinks ancient magic is so sexy, Alfie. This is my stupid school, and there he's just a doll boy. They think Finarlem stole the Keeper of the Dead position, and he's not a real heir. I'm not sure you ever quite comprehend what our peers are like, because you're just running around with George. You get everything you need and want, and you never have to be alone in a hostile environment. Are you trying to tell me I don't comprehend prejudice? No, but it's like bad. Whenever you talk about your childhood, it's always some game you played or you running around the neighborhood. My childhood was consumed with desperately trying to fit in, and it still is. I think your parents and George have protected you sometimes. George? Not to diminish what George does, but no one is protecting me from stupid people. The reason I didn't go to your school is because they don't accept blind children, not so I could run around the neighborhood, Alfred said, a little cool now. Was Thessia actually implying he was a naive rich boy? Well, at least they were getting more honest. She inhaled slowly. I'm sorry, Alfie. You're just so cheerful, and I can't seem to get a hold of myself lately. I try so hard to be a perfect girl when I'm around you. I don't want to lose you. I guess I wonder sometimes how you can be so cheerful in such a cruel world, and then Hey, it's okay. He reached for her hand, but she seemed to have shrunk into her chair, and the food was coming, so he never made contact. He didn't even want to ponder how they must look. Thessia had to be showing her tears, and he slid into a forced jauntiness as the plates were put before them, with a little inane babbling about how good it smelled. The sommelier poured their wine glasses with a painfully long tale of the vineyard along the west coast from which it was sourced. Saranzi's was one of the best places to get traditional Atlantean cuisine. Alfred had ordered them both the fish of the day, caught mere hours prior and grilled over coals, needing nothing more than salt and a kiss of lemon, paired with the rice dish, kusra, cooked slowly in red wine, broth, and sheep butter until it was creamy and rich, with peas and fresh herbs added near the end. But he didn't feel like he could even have one bite yet. Thessia sounded so lost. Since he hadn't been paying much attention to her, he might have missed a cry for help. She didn't have anyone else in her life, as far as he knew. No one who really cared. Most of the time, she seemed like a perfect Daramon girl. Hard for him to fully reach, and yet there was this other side to her. Vulnerable, lonely. It wasn't like he didn't know this. In fact, he had always thought that when they were finally married, that was the side he could truly fall in love with someday. The side of her he would come to understand and fiercely protect. Livonia's entrance was a stark reminder that he wasn't especially turned on by protecting someone vulnerable. It was a proper dynamic for a marriage, so he could almost convince himself that he liked it. But no, he liked that Livonia felt like someone who might outwit or outfight him if he didn't stay on his toes. She was so direct with all her feelings and thoughts. No pretense, no masks. "I'm sorry that I've been so absent lately," Thessia said after sipping her wine. "No," he said, "I've been the absent one." "You haven't! You even came to my choir concert. I've been terrible about checking in on you, and you've been dealing with this curse and everything." "I've been equally terrible to you," he said. "Thessia, He tried to toss his words over the hurdle. "Just spit it out. It's not going to get any easier." The uncomfortable truth sat between them like a boulder on the table, as if already she was blocked from his reach. Law degree or not, she was a Daramon girl, with a very powerful father, and she couldn't get free without another powerful man at her side. He was all she had, and she needed him. But I owe it to her to be honest, and to Livonia. Or do I owe it to her to save her? "I was thinking," he said, which was so tepid that he was instantly ashamed. George was more eloquent than this, for fate's sake. She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. I should be honest with you. I went to a rally today, and a riot broke out. Someone shoved me down, and I scraped my arm on the pavement. I didn't have any healing potion on me, which was so stupid, and I was going to be late to meet you here, so I just made my way out of there and got to the subway." Unbelievable. She was oblivious to his agonies because she had brought her own. "A riot? And you're taking the subway to and from Det's rallies?" This wasn't really a Det rally. It was just a little protest gathering that got out of hand. "What part of the city?" "Whitefields," she said softly. "Ballora, that's rough." "It's not that bad. It's just a poorer area." "And don't tell me you blend in. You can't bullshit me. I've gone on too many stupid excursions myself. You should not be on the subway alone, especially not in neighborhoods like that." "Well, no one goes with me," she said a little stubbornly. "And you get hurt all the time. You do all sorts of stupid things. And I know you don't always take George with you. And don't try and tell me it's different for you, as if you couldn't be killed. I have an arsenal of magical objects with me and training in how to fight." "Oh, come on," she said. "I have magical objects. We all have magical objects." He rubbed his forehead. Curses, she could get herself seriously hurt. "I beg you not to do this, Thess. Please, I'm starting to worry that you have a death wish." That sobered her up. No, it's nothing like that." She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry for worrying you. Anyway, we should eat before it gets cold. It does smell wonderful. We don't eat at Saranzi's every day, and I'm ruining it." "Stop apologizing," he said. "Never apologize for your passion for other people. It's what makes you you." "Would you go with me, Alfie?" she asked in a more vulnerable tone than usual. No trace of the eternally cheerful, perfect Thessia, who spent so much time with his mother. "To hear Det speak? Just once? Maybe it won't do much for you, but hearing his speeches on TV really isn't the same. It would mean the world to me." "Thessia." He took a slow breath. "I truly mean it when I say you are more important to me than my blood relations, but I don't think what we have is romantic love." Her breath came sharp, with a weird little squeak. "Well, isn't that how it is? Your parents don't really. Do we want to settle for that? But we're good together." She paused. "Oh, I just realized what this is about. You like Livonia, don't you?" "I'm sorry," he said, his throat getting tight. "You and I are good together. I thought it was enough, but I don't think it would be enough for either of us over the decades. The strain of our parents trying to control our decisions. The kids you don't really want." Thessia was quiet, but even his weak telepathy could feel her entire soul quivering with pain. He tried to block it out. He picked up his wine and took the tiniest sip. He really didn't get wine, honestly. The sommelier had gone on about it, and it just tasted like wine. I understand, she finally whispered. That hung in the air a moment. He waited for more, but she left it at that. But that was Thessia. She didn't usually talk out her agonies. If she knew she was up against a wall, she just bore it silently, like the way she had never once said she didn't want kids. I am sorry, Alfred said. I want you to know that if there's anything I can do for you. I hate to ask this, she said. Can we just not tell our parents until I have my law degree? The only reason Papa allowed me to go to university is because you said you didn't mind. I need a way I can try to get out. The life of the restaurant went on around them, the polite voices and muted laughter of the wealthy. Thessia knew how to fit in, but she hated it. Like all women of her class, she was trapped. In the end, he thought, all she has ever wanted is a way out. Of course, and if you need a place to stay, my door is always open. I'll get a bigger place if I need to, Thess. I mean it. We're still friends and allies in this crazy world. I don't think so, she said tightly, but thank you. How'd it go? George asked. You couldn't do it, could you? The longer you put it off, the more explosive and memorable it will be, you know. If you thought crapping on the blindness curse was a thrill, just wait. I always love your pep talks, George, Alfred said softly. But no, I did it. It was cordial. It was everything that made us a fine couple, but not a great one. She just asked if we could keep it secret from our parents. That'll be easy if they never speak to me again. I offered her a place if she needs one, but she basically said, fuck off, only translated into Thessian. Well, you can't protect everybody, George said. You have to pick one person. Just some advice from your Santaroon. He patted Alfred's shoulder and handed him a chocolate-covered hazelnut. Sophia called while you were gone, by the way, with the report on Livonia's uncle. Any leads? No, George said. She referenced everyone working on Det's campaign with all the records in the library, and no one matches. It's like he never existed. That is segment number 3, I think, yes. In this bit, you know, if you've read the Cursed Soul trilogy, you will know Grau and Velsa already, and the encounter between Alfred trying to recruit Grau and Velsa, interestingly, was their first appearance in a story. I just wrote Alfred trying to get this mysterious Phenarlum sorcerer to work for him, and that was Grau. And even though it was just one little scene, the scene was quite different from this, because it was written, you know, like 20 years ago. But even though it was just a short little scene, I was like, I really like Grau and his wife that I'd written into the story, and that got me kind of like in the back of my mind, sort of like, I wonder what their backstory is. What is their deal? Why is there this mysterious couple of Phenarlum living out in the the marsh? And that little scene led to the Cursed Soul trilogy, so it was fun to kind of bring it full circle and rewrite that scene after writing the Cursed Soul trilogy, now really knowing Grau and Velsa. And one of the first things I ever wrote about Grau was that he showed up without any skin on his hands, just with like a bare metal skeleton, and it was just like, oh, I'm always messing up my skin with all these potions and substances, so I just leave my skin off. And that was one of the things that made him like this eccentric, so that also made it back into the story. There's a lot of little links between different characters throughout the past and later books. Maybe an unrealistic number, but you know, it is a small world. Our world, as big as it is, still ends up being small, because just if you're in a particular circle, it still ends up being a small world. So I don't think it's entirely unrealistic that this group of characters I'm writing about, that's kind of, you know, sort of the elite sorcerers and people who deal in magic, you could say in a general way, a lot of the characters fall under that banner, so it makes sense that they would kind of all end up knowing each other over the generations. The other thing I really love about this segment is that it's the first time in this story where we get to really see Thessia's other side. I loved writing the dinner scene where Alfred's trying to break up with her and she keeps bringing up problems. Like she's coming to this dinner thinking like, I'm gonna have a difficult conversation with him about like his politics and my politics, And you could tell she's like all stressed out over this. And then meanwhile, he's thinking like, oh no, I invited her out to this dinner to break up with her. They both come with this baggage. And I didn't initially plan that. It just kind of like every time he was about to say something, she said something that I didn't even expect. But I was like, oh, that's so funny and also so fitting that she's actually like, who are you going to vote for? I think this is kind of relatable, especially in recent years, to really need to pin down who your partner is going to vote for in an election. They're also in a very pivotal moment in their history where the stakes of an election feel extremely high as far as what direction the world is going to go. So I've always really liked that Alfred and Thessia, despite not really ending up together romantically, do remain, I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but they are like so sweet to each other. They really are kind of like a sibling relationship more so than a couple, but like they're very, very cute and supportive of each other, and it just feels like it comes naturally. So I loved writing that scene because they're like starting to understand each other's real selves a little more, and it's just a step along the journey of having a real, honest relationship. So I hope you enjoyed this. I will be back very soon with another installment. We're going to get through this book this time. It's not going to take 7 months, I promise. If you're enjoying these readings, of course, the very best thing you can do is to buy copies of the books if you want to support the many, many, many hours of barely paid labor I put into making these read-alouds. But I understand not everybody has a lot of money, so the second best, actually it's probably equally good, other great thing that you can do is, of course, to leave a review, tell a friend, tell a reading group, tell anybody about these books. I also appreciate that so, so much. Thank you so much for listening. There's a link to my books in the description, and I'll see you next time with the next installment. Bye!